start. MTC. Q-2 number 1. I have been a subscriber to your internet service for the last 2.5 years, but of late the amount of spam has increased dramatically. 2. The pop-ups in particular are very disturbing, and the content of the spam is really offensive. I am totally appalled by these messages. Other members of my family share my computer. Therefore, I demand that you stop these offensive and irritating communications and emails. Please let me know what steps you are going to take to solve this problem immediately. I am currently paying $60 per month for internet services. 60. I expect you to provide proper internet services for a customer like me. Unless these problems of spam and pop-ups are immediately solved, I am seriously considering switching over to one of your competitors who are eager to provide better services. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Q-2 number 2. Praise that arouses delight and pride in a baby and toddler can have very different effects on older children, particularly in the classroom. When Roy Baumeister studied the effects of praise, he found that it generated more anxiety than pleasure in school-aged children. Roy Baumeister. Children accustomed to the background hum of praise seem to become dependent on praise to initiate any activity. A child who was accustomed to classroom praise spent less time focusing on a project and soon stopped working to wait for a teacher's assessment. Praise seemed to hinder concentration, too. Children's absorption in a task, often called flow, seemed to be disrupted by the reminder that someone was watching. When they were singing or playing an instrument, swimming or hitting a ball, or doing anything that involved deep skills run on autopilot, their performance was particularly badly affected by praise. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Q-2 number 3. Although bees and bee-pollinated flowering plants depend on each other, both operate selfishly. For each, there is a cost/benefit equation that must balance in its favor. Nectar and pollen production are costly to a plant and must be balanced for maximum return, that is, maximum chance of successful reproduction, for the energy spent to produce them. For example, individual flowers must contain enough nectar to attract pollinators, but little enough to keep pollinators motivated to visit many flowers, thus accomplishing pollination. Some plants accomplish this strategy by putting heavy nectar loads in only a few, 5 to 8%, of their flowers. 5-8. These constitute the so-called lucky hits for a bee that motivate it to keep foraging on the plant. Flight and foraging activity are energetically costly to a bee and must be balanced against the calories derived from nectar and pollen. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Q-2 number 4. Uncertainty is a basic fact of life. Despite uncertainty, people must make predictions about the world. Will the car you are considering buying be reliable? Will you like the food you order? When you see an animal in the woods, what should you do? One source of information that reduces uncertainty is category membership. Although all express sports cars are not exactly the same, they are so similar that you can predict with some confidence that the new sports car you are considering will be reliable. Express Sports Car, Sports Car. Kansas City-style barbecue ribs are not identical, but they taste more similar to one another than they do to roast chicken or tofu dishes. Kansas City. Knowing the category of an entity therefore serves to reduce the uncertainty associated with it, and the category reduces uncertainty to the degree that the category members are uniform with respect to the prediction you want to make. This category-based induction is one of the main ways that categories are useful to us in everyday life. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Q-2 number 5. It's amazing how much you can learn about your friends and family, your job, the organization you work in, and yourself when you decide to really listen to others. But not everyone understands this benefit. For example, we heard a story about a tennis pro who was giving a lesson to a new student. After watching the novice take several swings at the tennis ball, the pro stopped him and suggested ways he could improve his stroke. But each time he did, the student interrupted him and gave his opinion of the problem and how it should be solved. After several interruptions, the pro began to nod his head in agreement. When the lesson ended, a woman who had been watching said to the pro, "Why did you go along with that arrogant man's stupid suggestions?" The pro smiled and replied, "I learned a long time ago that it is a waste of time to try to sell real answers to anyone who just wants to buy echoes." Beware of putting yourself into a position where you think you know all the answers. Anytime you do, you'll be putting yourself in danger. It's almost impossible to think of yourself as the expert and continue growing and learning at the same time. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Q-2 number 6. There are a number of ways in which technology can be used to protect social network users from disclosure or privacy threats or violations. More drastic technical solutions involve disabling or banning social media/social networking. For example, some schools and workplaces place explicit restrictions or in some cases a complete ban on social networking sites, and they are disabled at the IT level so that students or employees cannot access these sites. The problem with this solution is that the benefits of using these sites are also lost. Additionally, while this may prevent use of these sites during school or work hours, it has no impact on what is done after hours. The context collapse that occurs in an online environment blurs the line between people's professional and personal lives such that online information exchanges that occur outside of school or work hours impact people's lives at school or work. Therefore, employing these strategies is not necessarily effective in minimizing the potential risks overall. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Q-2 number 7. Bruce Abernethy, working with a group from Brunel University London, used fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, to examine the brains of elite badminton players as they exercised their skills of anticipation. Brunel University London Bruce Abernethy fMRI. They scanned players of various skill levels as they watched occluded clips of shots being played. The video clips would cut off just before contact was made with the shuttlecock, and tried to predict in which area of the court the shots would land. The expert players showed more brain activity in areas of the brain associated with observing and understanding other people's actions. One theory is that this activity represents the brain filling in the gaps and creating an internal model, a guess as to what's about to happen based on the movements of the opponent. The more experience an athlete has, the better they are at doing this. A few years later, the same group at Brunel did a similar study with footballers, who watched occluded clips of an opponent running towards them with the ball. Brunel. In some clips, the players would start a feint just before the video cut off, and the footballer in the scanner would have to predict whether they would go left or right. The earlier the clips were cut off, the bigger the difference in neural activity between semi-pro and novice footballers on fMRI scans. fMRI. According to the above studies, combined with their higher ability to observe their opponents, more experienced athletes are better at prediction performance. MTC. Good job.